Hello everyone, this is Andrew with Drake Custom Base, and what I have on my bench here today is an Ibanez base. I'm not sure the year, I'm not sure the model. Originally it was a 32 scale 4-string, and I was tasked a couple years ago with converting it to a 5-string. And part of the requirements for that project were that I had to keep the original pickguard. I had to keep the same pickup configuration. I think it was a P, and we had to add the jazz pickup. So I had custom made pickups for the 5-string configuration we have here. Um, it had to fit the original hard shell case, so I had to make the dimensions fit that case. And the other requirement was that I had to use material sent by the client. And I'll cover what all went into that neck making and all that later. Right now, we're going to focus on my method that I use when I replicate a pick guard off an existing instrument. I'm sure I could go out and find an Ibanez pick guard, maybe even one in decent condition, that I could just drop on here, and I'd have to modify the neck pocket a little bit. But I think we're going to do it from scratch, because what we want to do is make this a 3-control layout, and we're going to keep the output jack here. And so these right now I believe are stacked, volume and tone, volume, tone, something to that effect. And that's going to go away, and it's just going to be an individual controls, volume, blend, tone, and the output jack. So we are going to modify the pick guard to have those 4 holes, and I might have to, I can't remember, it's been a few years, but I might have to route out a little recess here for that other control. So we're going to get into it now. And first step is to take the strings off and disassemble. So what we got here is there's a Schaller bridge. Palfaro, I believe, is what we used. Maybe it was Bubinga. It was Bubinga for the fretboard, and quarter-sawn maple neck, and Schaller tuners. As I said before, the customer supplied the wood that I had to use for the neck. And I did refinish the body with just a quick glossy coat after fixing a few dents and dings. Okay, now that the instrument has been disassembled, I have the pick guard. I've already done this, so I'm not going to move it around right now, but I put it on top of a piece of MDF, and I've traced around. I made sure that I traced around the pickup layout, the screw holes. I even got the controls in this particular situation, because we are going to use those holes a little bit. We're just going to add another one into the line, and I will be measuring the distances between a couple points here to find a center line. Sometimes that helps. When you're duplicating, it's not necessary, generally speaking, but it's a practice I've gotten into. Now, one trick you can use to duplicate the spacing is just take that same pick guard and place one hole, and then just use this third hole here, or this extra hole. I don't want to get too close to the pickups. That looks about right, so that's where I'm going to put it. Also, the customer has sent this pre-wired harness that he wishes to have installed, and it's a rather nice harness, cleanly done, It is the type of pots that I normally would use, which I believe are Noble brand in this case here. Um, very well done. I might actually use some of these harnesses in my own projects going forward. Anyway, just want to make sure that the harness, and it does have plenty of spacing, so that the wiring's not going to be too tight or stretched or anything like that. So that will go right onto the new pickguard. After some thought, I decided I didn't want such a wide spread. I didn't want this volume so close to the pickups. So I just kind of penciled out the path I wanted to follow, and I just kind of measured out inch and a half from all these points. And that's where I'm going to drill for my controls. These are mini pots I'm going to be using, so they don't take up a lot of space, and there'll still be plenty of distance in between that they won't be too cramped. I think that will also make it so I don't have to modify the body that much more. It will take a lot less routing. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Well, one of the things I encounter doing modifications, like such as what we're doing now, is that a lot of times standard, there's no such thing as standard anymore. The pick guard, which I traced, has this type of a pattern for the P pickup. It does not fit, and I have several spacings in different shapes of the P pickup. Some are a little bit wider, some are narrower. The closest I have is a little bit too wide. The spacing of these sections is closer together on the Ibanez layout. So what I'm going to have to do, what I oftentimes have to do, is actually stick the template on, route a portion, then detach and refix the template to do the second part, just to copy that layout. So that's what I'm going to do now. Alright, well, it's day 2. I actually had to switch cameras for different phones yesterday, and I had a battery die, so I had to wait till today, get back on this. And the footage that I thought I recorded of me routing got lost. I had my bigger router out here to do the basic pattern, and I had the template on there, if you remember. So while I had the template on there, I used my laminate trimmers. This has a really tiny 3/16 bit, and this is to get in the corners. And this is what I did on the other side of this. I got into the corners. I don't know if you can see here, because my bigger router was 3/8 of an inch, is the smallest bearing bit that I have, and for the bulk of the work, these little bits that I use here, they cannot handle the high heat and stress of trying to do this whole project. So I used the big one to remove the bulk. The smallest diameter I have is 3/8, and on the pick guard, let me grab that real quick. The pick guard has really tight corners, and for the pickup to fit in there without big ignorant gaps around it, we want to get those corners tight. I could get a square file or something like that, but I find that if I use the 3/16 bit, that is tight enough of a radius. Now, since I was only able to get with the template on top of there down maybe 3/16 of an inch deep, because the bit actually widens out and it would just rub against the template and ruin the template. So my depth was limited, so I'll have to flip it over. And then my other laminate trimmer, I have a 3/16, but it has the bearing on the end. And what I'll do essentially is from the back side, I will get the bearing in here and it'll just trim that rest of that out. And then our template basically is complete. Now, before I mentioned I don't cut the neck pocket out, because my plan is that when the actual pick guard is cut, and I'll cut it to this, but you can see it's not quite to the final line. When I actually will stick this onto the instrument, then I'll use this bit with the reverse bearing to actually trim the pick guard to match the actual pocket, because the pocket's nice and tight on the instrument and I want the pick guard to fit perfectly. I will also be modifying the truss rod access, because it appears that it's not big enough to actually get the truss rod wrench in to adjust when the neck is actually mounted, which is a not very convenient thing. All right, so I'm confident that everything seems to line up. Everything's matches up. So I'm happy with the results of that. We'll go on to the next step. Okay, so the next step, now that everything has been cut, the holes have been drilled, the basic shape is done, I need to have a way to mount it into my vise. Some guys might stick these down onto plywood or some other fixture, but I usually put a block that can be clamped into the vise, and it has to clear so that my bits, and when I'll be routing from the other direction, I don't want to come in contact with it. So I go ahead and lay it out and mark it out. And since we'll be actually doing this upside down, I'll just drill the holes through, and this will actually be mounted on this side, because, and I'll explain this later, but basically we don't want to scratch up the nice surface side of the pick guard material, so I do it from the back, so the router rides on the back of the pick guard, not onto the nice shiny surface of the top. So I'm gonna go ahead and drill these. Let's go ahead and start from this other side. Simple drill bit with a countersink, and I usually countersink both sides because you never know, you might have to do a left hand, right hand. This just makes it easy to flip it over. Alright, so we're ready to cut this pickguard material out. I have the block attached to my template. These are recessed so the router won't hang up on it. Not that it would, because this is actually going to be covering it, but I don't want anything to scratch or mark the back side of the material here, because actually it's going to be, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a protective coating on this that gets peeled away later, and there'll be a glossy black underneath it. And this is to protect it. We don't want anything that's going to scratch the plastic. I don't know if you can see in the light, there's two-way tape, the shiny spots there. It's just carpet tape. You get it at the local hardware store. And what we're going to do now is make sure we get to the edges. We want to leave as much material left. I can do acoustic pick guards, all kinds of things out of the remnants of this, so we might as well not waste it. And it's now fixed down there. Again, the side that will get scratched up, the side that the router is going to ride on. This is the back side. It's dusty because it's static. I can't get the dust off of it. It's not a big deal. All right, to the bandsaw right over here. So I'm just going to trim around it within maybe 1/8 of an inch, and the router will do all the rest. All right, so we're ready to route now. I have the big router out, one of my bigger routers, and you can see that the bit is a trim bit with the bearing on it. The bearing is going to ride along the MDF here that we made the template. Just a note that I did bore some holes that the bit will fit into, because while it's upside down, I'm going to go ahead and route those as well, and then I'll go back with my little trim bit just to clean up the inside of the now there's bits out there that are beveled that you can cut a bevel, but since we're doing it upside down so we don't risk scratching the nice side of the material, we can't really cut the bevel. I actually still hand scrape, that way I can kind of choose the bevel I want, so I do that by hand afterwards. Alright, so we're gonna, and I have the bit adjusted. It won't hit anything, any of the hard metal bits. Even when I'm doing the route for the pickup, it's not going to hit my vise at all. And this is the method I do. A lot of people mount it a different way, but this is, with my fixtures in here, this is the best way for me to do it. And I'm going to work this way around because the way the bit cuts, it'll want to run a little bit. The reason I just do it this way when I'm doing wood, working with wood, it will tend to chip if I try to go this way. And I've just gotten a habit of doing these types of cutouts going this direction, which is clockwise. All right, so the next step is we're going to route for the pickup. So I'll go ahead to get the bit in there. All right, the last step to clean this up, I'm going to use a small version of that same type of bit, and this will actually get the corners that I needed to. All right, back at the drill press, and we're going to use our holes that we drilled earlier to make the mounting holes. You can see the router left some scratches, and this is why we do the routing from the back. All right, last step, since we have everything, we need to drill our holes since we have everything still stuck together with the template. I'll just use this brad tip bit. Alright, so everything looks good. It actually, all the holes align. I do have to remove some material here, and I'm happy to find that we don't have to remove much, so I'll probably just use a 1-inch Forstner to take away some material. The pots aren't very deep, that's just the volume, and so I maybe have to go down 3/4 of an inch, then some more shielding paint back in there, and that'd be fine. The other thing I'll need to do is get this aligned on here, and then I'll have to use my bit to clean out to match the pocket, and I'll just use the pocket wall as my template for that. It'll be that trim bit that I have in my laminate trimmer. Using this bit here as the 1/8 to, I believe, 1/4 taper here, and this is what I use to cut the bevels for the screws. Okay, next step here, I have installed the pickguard. I put screws in because I want it to be perfectly aligned. This is how it will lay on top of the body, and so now I need to route this away. I have this piece of MDF. It's bigger. This is just so the router has something to write on without leaving scratches and marks into the face of the pickguard. And so again, we have the bit with the little bearing on the end. I'll double check it's deep enough, and it's not. That should do it. Lock it in place. And get a little bit organized here, and here we go. All right, the next step on this particular pickguard is the truss rod wrench access. Now there is one that was already there, but I want to make this a 1/4 inch deeper. That way, I noticed the wrench has a hard time getting down into the actual truss rod nut access there, so I'm going to extend this a little bit longer just so that's easier. And to do that, I'll use my $20 Craftsman router with a bullnose bearing bit, and I just found a template here that's similar to the size and shape of the access, so that's what we're going to use for that. And I'll paint that black just to make that look a little bit better. Alright, now I need to cut away a little bit of the material here so that the third pot that we're putting in here will have some space. Won't need to go that deep, maybe 3/4 of an inch. Okay, now that the new pickguard has been installed, and the fretboard has been cleaned up and oiled, the fret ends have been addressed, and a few other small things have been completed. The instrument's back together and has been tested. Everything works great. And you can see how the new pickguard looks compared to what it used to look like. I think it's a big improvement. Well, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you again on the next video.